our next presenter, Olivia Moon.
Good afternoon. My name is Olivia Moon, and I will be presenting my thesis on the power of influence, allowing Christ to be our #1 influencer. The Great Commission is a term that Christians hold near and dear to their hearts. Simply stated, the Great Commission commands followers of Christ to spread the gospel to all ends of the earth. With the infiltration of social media into the lives of people worldwide, that should make achieving the Great Commission easier than ever before. However, that is not the case. Social media, in reality, is a metaphorical plague that has taken over our world and has negatively engulfed the minds of its users. Does this mean that we should ban social media from the lives of Christians? Possibly, but that is an unlikely suggestion since social media is not inherently sinful. Rather, Christians must consider the possible detrimental consequences that may arise if social media is an obsession, not a tool to achieve the Great Commission. Christians must consider whether they are influencers on social media or consumers of social media. Jesus would warn believers to be mindful of what the world is selling, as he's already declared, "Watch out and guard yourselves against every form of greed, for not even when one has an overflowing abundance does his life consist of, nor is his life derived from his possessions." It is important for Christians to strive for purposefulness and intentionality with any resource given to spread the love of God. If not, we will inadvertently assimilate into the broken culture where we live today. Pandora's box serves as a warning that Christians must heed in order to combat the effects that social media has on our world. Let's first understand the reason for referencing Pandora's box. Zeus commanded Hephaestus to craft a beautiful woman out of earth and water. Not only was she beautiful, but she was given a special, unique gift by each of the Olympian gods before her inevitable journey to earth. This woman is named Pandora, which means the gift of all, because she was given such powers by each of the gods. Then, one fateful night, after marrying Epimetheus and being given the box of gifts, Pandora, succumbing to her curiosity, peeked inside of the box. But even the little peek was too much. Pandora tried to shut the box, but it was too late. The box flew open, and all of the plagues and sorrows that were once held strictly inside of the box were then released into the world. Sickness, insanity, pestilence, vice, passion, greed, crime, lies, jealousy, and even death. Before inhabiting the world and destroying all humanity, the scourges stung Pandora and Epimetheus, leaving them in extreme pain. Pandora was devastated with the harm that she caused all humanity, but then she looked once again inside of the box, and one little sprite of goodness flew out: hope. Buried deep beneath all of the misery was hope, the only redemptive power to save humanity in times of deep and sincere despair. A myth as old as Pandora's box, from 600 BC, reveals possible dangers of unbridled curiosity. Social media is the present-day Pandora's box, as it has opened our world to some of the exact same plagues and sorrows that Pandora's box did for her world. However, like the myth, we have a sprite of hope. As Christians, despite the disheartening reality of the plagues of social media, we can still strive to use social media as a way that honors God and not as a way of inhabiting the customs of our world. Social media influences all its users, but as Christians, we must be on our guard for how we are allowing it to influence us, and we need to be the influencers of it. Christians, whether we want to accept it or not, are treating social media and technology as an idol in our lives, allowing it to control and influence us to the point that we are hurting ourselves. Sociologists, lawyers, preachers, professors, and therapists all agree that the media is affecting our culture, our children, and our relationships with the Lord. We are so obsessed with ourselves and the perfectly pictured lives of others on social media that we spend countless hours mindlessly scrolling and liking posts. But when was the last time we spent hours reading and studying God's Word? Let's begin by imagining a world that is constantly at war with itself. In the same world, imagine different groups of people that are separated based on culture, belief, or location. In this world, imagine a government that is sworn to speak only the truth, yet news and data prove fallacies of what was once proclaimed as the truth. Imagine a world claiming to be bettering generations to come, yet children are being exposed to ideas and concepts that many adults do not even fully grasp. In this world, imagine different religions claiming to be treated equally. However, when a certain religion shares their beliefs, they receive backlash that no other religions receive. If this sounds familiar to you, that is because that is the world we live in today. We live in a world that uses social media platforms as a way of relentlessly pressing certain thoughts and beliefs upon others. We live in a world claiming to tolerate all views. However, our social media platforms are engulfed in hate comments that are being taken out of the screens and onto the streets, where buildings and personal belongings are being destroyed just to show loyalty to a cause. We live in a world where the government is full of secrets and only tells us what they want us to know, when they want us to know it. We live in a world where children, no matter the age, have access to social media that has no true filter of the atrocious reality of the happenings of our world. We live in a world claiming to accept all religions. However, if you admit to be a Christian and post on social media about your beliefs, you're immediately shamed, receiving messages that might make you question aspects of your faith. We live in a world so obsessed with influencers, with likes, and with followers that even Christians are losing sight of their one true callings to be disciples of the Lord, sharing His love with others. In the world we live in today, seldom do people have their own thoughts and opinions. This may be from the news, schools, or simply just driving down the road and seeing billboards. Everywhere you turn, you're bombarded with some form of advertisement. It is up to us to be aware of what we are allowing to consume so much of our time. If we continue to allow ourselves to spend so much time on social media, scrolling and being constantly influenced by worldly biases, then how are we ever going to have time to grow our relationships with the Lord? In order to keep social media from becoming our number one influencer and priority over God, we must make time for the Lord and stop worshiping our phones. Christians may not be physically bowing down to the screens that they have at their fingertips, but I bet their screen times would say otherwise. Technology is front and center in our lives. It's in our pockets and even on our wrists. Do we treat the Bible this way? For most Christians, the answer is no. For most, they allow the world to impact their lives far more than they allow the Bible to influence their lives. We were created for community with people. However, social media should not be our primary form of connection. If we allow social media to dominate our lives, then we're allowing it to have too much control over our thoughts. Paul writes in Philippians, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable. If there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you." Christians are encouraged to fix their eyes upon heavenly ideals in order to keep their hearts in line with God. Despite distractions that we may face on earth, we cannot let the world affect our theology. We cannot let our worldview affect our biblical view. In fact, our biblical view should be what influences our worldview. Our love for God should be the source of all of our thoughts, opinions, and actions. Why do we feel like social media should be our primary form of relationship building and maintaining when it was only created a little under 30 years ago? In 1997, Andrew Weinrich founded Six, the first ever social media-like platform. The initial intention for it was for people to be able to connect with their contacts, people they already knew, privately, by creating a profile page and sending messages within the database. Within 3 short years, that company was bought and soon shuttered. Then, in 2003, MySpace was published, a platform where you could create blogs, add movies and photographs, and showcase your skills and interests on a public profile page that was visible to any user of the platform. For almost every year since 2003, a new social media platform with new advancements and new features has been released. With new features comes more and more ways for you to post your life to hundreds of thousands of people who do not know you and who do not need to know every detail of your life. Privacy is something that our society no longer values. However, it is something as Christians we must protect at all costs. After all, knowledge is power, but power in the wrong hands can lead to utter destruction. It can be fun to post on social media, and in no way is posting bad, but posting every detail of your life is simply not safe. Additionally, with posting comes obsessing over the number of likes, followers, and comments you have, which likely turns into mindlessly scrolling through your feed while you wait for your post to gain more attention. Social media has proven itself to be an addiction like any other addiction. The only way to free yourself from the trap of social media is to be aware of the addictive nature of it. Social media, unlike other addictions, is indefinitely and automatically refilling itself, never giving its users a chance to stop. The infinite nature of social media causes it to be one of the most challenging addictions to break. With substance addictions, its users run out at some point, even if that just be temporarily. That causes the users to have a break from their addiction, and it makes it the slightest bit easier for them to get a hold of their addiction. According to Dr. Nancy DeAngelis, CRNP and Director of Behavioral Health at Jefferson Health, says, social media platforms drive surges of dopamine to the brain, causing the consumers to come back over and over again. The shares, likes, and comments on these platforms trigger the brain's reward center, resulting in a high, similar to the one people get when gambling or using drugs. Social media is just another addiction that our society has fallen victim to, and it is an addiction that can be broken, but only if the user is truly willing to put in the time it takes to free themselves from it. The world has been completely engulfed in social media since it was created, and very few people have taken the time to realize and consider the possible long-term effects it may have on its users. We claim to be building better, stronger relationships, but in reality, is that what's happening? Or are we as a society putting all of our faith and support into a new creation that may and currently is causing far more harm than it is good? As Christians, why are we allowing ourselves to fall into the trap of social media along with the rest of the world? Why are we allowing social media to take over our lives, allowing it to control us? Our society pushes and showcases the wonderful advancements that social media brings to our world. However, there are many downsides that we must be taking into consideration if we're going to continue to allow ourselves to spend so much time on it daily. The minds behind social media have created a new disguised evil that consumes the minds of those who use it. They've created a new drug, a new alcohol, a new addiction that so many of us have allowed to take over our lives. We idolize social media without even realizing it, but that is not the first time that our society has dismissed all potential negative effects that a new creation may have down the road. Take cigarettes, for example. In the 1900s, smoking cigarettes was popular and quite commonplace. During that time, advertisements were posted encouraging people to buy and smoke cigarettes. The advertisements even included doctors smoking and a quote from them speaking about the benefits of cigarettes. Then, in the 1960s, news broke of the profound amount of data proving that smoking cigarettes led to lung cancer and ultimately death. A habit that was once wholeheartedly supported by medical professionals and other well-educated individuals ultimately led to great confusion, sickness, and disease. Should we not be the slightest bit concerned that social media could be causing the same negative consequences to us now? Since its origins, social media has captivated our world, and we have dismissed the idea of potential long-term effects it could have on its users. However, Mary Hepburn, an academic researcher at the University of Georgia and author of the article, "The Power of the Electronic Media and the Socialization of Young Americans," quotes Harvard scholar Kiko Adato in her article and states, "Years of electronic news consumption received in quick, brief segments and sound bites of speech have produced a shorter attention span for news and less understanding of public affairs, especially for those who have little background knowledge. The way we are consuming media is destroying our attention spans." According to the National Library of Medicine, Stephanie Olson states, "Media multitasking has been linked to worse attentional control, greater distractibility, as well as attention lapses, which results in a number of learning and behavioral disabilities in our young children." Over the course of years since social media's origins, the number of cases of children being diagnosed with ADHD, dyslexia, as well as other learning disabilities has distinctly increased due to the overconsumption of media and screens. Technology has caused more and more learning, behavioral, and comprehension challenges for our students. A low attention span creates less patience. Less patience creates frequent arguments and disagreements. Frequent arguments and disagreements creates division, and division is not the plan God had for us. Justin Earley writes in his book, Made for People, "Technology will either push us further into friendship or drive us into dangerous loneliness. Is technology worth this possibility? Technology has allowed many people to form connections, to communicate with others across the world, and to gain an immense amount of knowledge. However, connections are not friendships, communication with random people is not intimacy, and a worldly knowledge is not wisdom. In many cases, social media can lead to tribalism through the isolation that is formed from crafted algorithms and personalized news feeds that amplify a person's already established opinion and connect them to other like-minded individuals. Social media is one of the largest inhibitors of the division found in our world today. As a society, we claim to be building better, stronger relationships by forming connections with like-minded people. But what about the people that disagree with what we believe in? How are we treating them? How are we making them feel like they are loved, included, and made with a purpose? Are we allowing these cliques to form a greater divide rather than mend the division? If we continue to allow technology to form a greater divide, then at some point there will be no way to come back. There will be no way to mend the divide happening in our world today. As Christians, have we lost sight of this? Or have we allowed the views of the world to overcome our views of the Bible? We were all created with different talents and different interests, but it was God's intention that in our differences, we would find unity through Him. There is a bond of peace that comes with the relationship with God, and peace ultimately is what unifies all nations. As Christians, we should strive to use our social media platforms as a way of proclaiming peace and building unity through the nations, rather than allowing ourselves to become a part of the divide taking over our world today. Can social media mend and fix the brokenness of this world? It could, but that will never happen if we do not show the love of God through others, through how we spend our time, who we follow, what we post, and how we present ourselves on social media and in the world. Sadie Robertson, in her book titled Who Are You Following?, discusses her experiences as a Christian social media influencer who has grown up on the screens and whose life has been portrayed for the whole world her whole life. Robertson claims that we all desire to be known and loved by someone, and that the only person that can fulfill those desires is God. Robertson says, when you try to figure out the truth by creating your own truth, you are just distancing yourself from the truth, which only leads to more confusion. We live in a world where everyone is trying to find a way to be loved. But many do not realize that God is love, and that without God's love in your life, you will never truly be satisfied. A true sense of love, belonging, and acceptance will never come from things of this world or people of this world. True love, belonging, and acceptance will only come from knowing your Creator, because that is the only way you will truly know who you are. Social media, at its root, is not harmful, but when we allow it to be the core of where we form our beliefs and attitudes, we're allowing it to have too much power in our lives. The overindulgence of something that seems good can still be harmful if overconsumed. If we overindulge in our own desires with a fleeting form of satisfaction, we will only leave more broken than before. Prior to social media, the church was the main source of how people's beliefs and attitudes were formed. But today, people's beliefs and attitudes are more heavily influenced by social media and its influencers. People often use social media as a way to stay up to date with politics, with friends, and with family. However, social media has only been around for roughly 30 years. How do you think people survived before the creation of it? Long before social media, people were able to communicate with others and were knowledgeable about things going on in the world. Today, we live in a world that demands instant gratification and lacks patience, which often leads to our society dismissing potential dangers that a new thing may have just to be temporarily satisfied. Why do we put so much faith and support into numerous platforms that are full of blasphemous ideas that are not really true at all? In Ephesians 4:29, we are called to let no corrupting words come out of our mouth. We are to speak in a way that is good for building up and gives grace to those who hear. Much of what social media produces and supports is the exact opposite of what Ephesians 4:29 calls us to do. As Christians, creating boundaries between us and things of this world only helps us to better defend ourselves from acting on temptations. 2 millennia ago, Socrates warned the ancient Athenians of the dangers of their busy lifestyles and said, "Beware the bareness of a busy life." The Athenians were known for their bustling lifestyles full of social gatherings, debates, and public events, where they were often consumed with the pursuit of wealth, power, and pleasure, neglecting their purpose for life. Similar to the Athenians, many Americans are caught up in the exact same bustling lifestyles that the Athenians were. Socrates believed that the measuring of a good life was not simply the accumulation of activities, but rather the pursuit of wisdom and understanding. Technology can be used to enhance one's life, but it should not be used to replace genuine human connection and conversation. Socrates says that the secret of happiness is not in seeking more, but in developing the capacity to enjoy less. Proclaiming the gospel is one of the most important commandments God has given his people, and social media has created one of the largest diversions from this very commandment. It can easily become either your greatest tool or your greatest distraction. Which will you let it be in your own life? How much control will you allow it to have over you? Do not be influenced, be the influencer. Thank you. Okay, I would like to now open the floor for questions. Thank you.
So I've noticed, over the last couple of years, how often we have senior thesis topics that surround the negative aspect of technology, social media, and it filters into a lot of different topics. And if we continue to see this research that shows the negative aspects of it, why is nothing changing? Why is nothing going in a different direction?
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are still a lot of positive things that can come from social media. And some of what I talk about in my paper is that the biggest thing with social media is that, moderation and the amount of time you're spending on it really affects how much it's affecting you. And that goes into how negative it is affecting you. And so, if you're not spending an immense amount of time on it and you're still having time with your relationship with the Lord and doing other things, then it's not impacting you as negatively as it would be.
How has it impacted you?
For me, I'm a teenager, so I use technology and social media quite often. But I think after doing this paper, I've really found that there is a lot more that we're being affected by that we don't realize, and so I've been more conscious about my time spent on social media.
Wow.
So, Olivia, great job. In your paper, regularly you're basically saying that social media is not negative, it's neutral, or it can be used as positive, but all of your effects seem to be negative. And so, except for sharing the gospel, but I guess part of the thing, my question is this: there's a guy who was early on in looking at TV and media, and he said the medium is the message. In other words, we don't realize how deeply we are affected by things like social media until it already ruins us, as it were. And it seems like everything you're describing from social media, that's the case. So, do you think there are dangers of engaging with social media that we can't even see?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there are things that we don't even recognize, and part of like why I did the paper was to kind of uncover some of the things that it does affect and how it does affect us in ways that we don't know.
Okay. And then, King, in your last statement, do you think there are any dangers of trying to be the influencer?
I think there definitely can be, and I think you're more easily swayed and you have more voices coming to you when you're like the main person speaking. And so it's just really important, to have defense for your faith and to be aware of what you're doing and be able to stand up for it.
Okay, thank you.
I would just say, at the risk of repeating your question, I do think there are places where I'm struggling with this one statement, is that so at its root, social media is not harmful, yet there is still a quote here that you said, and it's also in your paper, that the minds behind social media have created a new disguised evil. So I'm kind of wondering what, I'm not saying you're necessarily saying two different things, but that's a pretty bold statement that social media is a disguised evil. So should we just be like, oh, that's fine as long as you don't use it too much, or should we be like, oh, you should be scared because this is actually evil in disguise? Like, where do you come down here?
You probably should be kind of scared for the way that it is affecting you, but I did a lot of research on how like the original minds behind social media didn't intend for social media to be what it has become. And so that's why I say at its root it's not harmful, because the creators didn't intend for it to be that way. But people have corrupted it and made it to what it is today, and that's how they've created it a new disguised evil, because it wasn't their intentions. It's just what we've made it to be.
So there are certain guards or things that you think that your friends, you have put into place or should put into place when using social media. Like, what is your lens now that you look at it through, and how do you protect yourself from the evil that it can be?
I think what's something is really important is like who you're following and who you're like, if you're just sitting there on social media just looking at random celebrities, that has nothing to do with you or people you know. It's one thing to stay up to date with friends and family, but just random people you don't know and just random information that's not important to you, it's really irrelevant, and that there's so much better you could be doing with your time. And so I think the biggest thing is just being conscious about what you're looking at and how much time you're spending on it, because in reality it's really not that important.
This is a great quote, by the way. Socrates says, the secret of happiness is not found in seeking more, but in developing the capacity to enjoy less. Say more about that.
To what extent?
You included it in your paper. I think it's a great quote. Say more about what that means to you.
To me, it just means that often with social media, we're just so consumed with all the things that are going on in the world, and there's just so much information. But really, there are so many little things in our own life and things that are happening outside of the screens around us that we're being distracted from because we're so consumed by our screens. And so, developing the capacity to enjoy less and for the simpler things in life, I think, is what he's getting at in that quote.
Okay, Olivia, I have a question. I'm torn between which of my two questions I want to ask you, but I think I've decided. Okay, in your paper, you talk about the crucible, and we read that as juniors. What about the crucible influenced what you wrote in your paper?
So in my paper, I talk about how in the crucible, many people were hanged in the crucible in the Salem witch trials because innocent lives it wasn't as important as how people felt that their image was. And so they accused whomever without any evidence, just to try and get people to just this mass hysteria that was rooted. And so I talk about in my paper how social media has created that exact same mass hysteria in our world today, and that there are so many times when people just care so much about their image that they just do whatever to just get attention on social media, and it just causes a lot of distractions and confusions in our world.
And then about minding one another's business, when we put all of our thoughts on social media, and now we know what all of our peers, they know what we're thinking. Should we always know what everyone around us thinks about everything?
That kind of goes into the other part of my paper where I'm talking about every single detail of your life is not important for everyone to know, and there's just so much that privacy is like a blessing that we have, and privacy is something that we should strive to protect, because not everyone needs to know everything that's happening in your life. It's not safe, and so we need to be able to protect ourselves from other people in that sense.
I have another question, but I'll see if anybody else has.
Yeah, I have a question, or a statement with a question. So, I think you know our family has lived in Louisiana for almost 20 years, and our connection with our family, we have been able to leverage social media because we have never lived by Leila or Sophie's grandparents or anyone. So we use that as a tool to invite them into our lives from a positive lens, right? Is it perfectly used? Absolutely not. But it has created an opportunity for my daughters to have a unique relationship with my mom, with my dad, and with their family. So I love your topic, but I view this as an opportunity that can actually be used as a positive, right? As a positive, because aside from that, they're 13 and 18 hours away from family, and it is the closest thing that they have.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely agree that social media can be used in a lot of positive ways. It's mostly the mindlessly scrolling that comes with that, of just sometimes where you get distracted and allow social media to dominate your life. That's when I really see it's an issue. But posting and staying connected with family is definitely not an issue, and it's something that it's really important, and I think that that's a great way that social media has allowed that to happen. Molly? sorry, inverse.
Do you think more Christian influencers could become hypocritical with all the bad connotation that comes with social media?
Yeah, I definitely think they can be, and I think a lot of times people can profess Christianity on social media, but then you see them in real life and it's like the complete opposite. So I think a lot of that can stem from that, and that's something to be aware of. There are dangers that come with social media, but not every aspect of it is bad.
Question.
Yeah?
Would you like to share the boundaries that were set for you? I'm thinking of one in particular.
Well, for me, like specifically, I wasn't allowed to have Snapchat until I turned 18, and that was something that my mom put into place of just wanting to protect me, and I wanted to continuously break that boundary that she put and asked all the time for it. But I'm very thankful that she allowed me to wait, because there's just so much that comes from that that I probably wouldn't have been able to handle at a younger age. Yes?
So, kind of connecting with Ms. Holt said, one of the things I've heard about technology is if you're using it purposefully, not for entertainment, it's almost always positive. But if you're using it for just entertainment, killing time, it's almost always destructive. And I'm just curious what you think about that.
I completely agree. And I think a lot of times, even if it is intended to be used purposeful, we can still be distracted by things that are happening. And so it can easily spiral into something that's much more negative than we intended it to be. All right. Oh, okay. If there are no more questions, thank you.